chosen ones. Listen carefully, because today something happened in heaven that almost no one speaks of. Something so rare that eternity itself leaned in to watch. You've heard of the thunder that split seas. You've heard of the roar of angels as they march into battle. But what shook the courts of heaven today was not war, not judgment, not fire. It was laughter, God's own holy laughter bursting forth because of a strange, almost hidden thing you did today. Imagine that for a moment. Your action, your step, your faith, so small in your eyes, caused the creator of the universe to erupt in unstoppable joy. This is not a laugh of mockery. It is not sarcasm. It is the laugh of a father who already sees the enemy's defeat. The laugh of one who knows your story's ending before you even take the next breath. And right now, heaven is roaring with delight because of you. Before we go deeper, I need to pause and thank every single one of you who has stood with this channel, especially those who've sown into it through super thanks. Your love is felt, and your faith is seen. You are not just viewers, you are living proof that God still moves through chosen ones in this generation. Comment 777 below if you're ready to step into the same frequency of heaven's laughter today. But here's the mystery. What exactly did you do? What was so strange, so unexpected, that it caused God himself to laugh in victory over your life? Stay with me, because the revelation you're about to hear will change how you walk, how you fight, and how you believe from this day forward. God's chosen ones. This strange thing you did today just made God burst into laughter. And today, heaven erupted with a laughter you never expected. It was not the laughter of mockery, but the laughter of divine surprise, the kind that only God himself can release. What you did today may have looked ordinary, almost invisible in your own eyes. It seemed small, almost fragile, maybe even born out of desperation. You whispered a prayer when you had no strength left in your chest. You forgave when the poison of bitterness felt like the safer weapon. You chose hope when despair curled around your body like heavy chains. You whispered yes to God when every instinct screamed no. Yet that yes carried the weight of eternity, like a single spark that can ignite a forest. The angels leaned closer, and the courts of heaven shifted because of a decision you made in silence. It didn't make headlines. No applause echoed from the earth. Maybe not a single soul around you noticed, but heaven noticed. And when heaven saw it, the throne shook with joy. Psalm 2, 4 declares. The one enthroned in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. That laughter was not cruel, it was victory. God laughed because what appeared fragile was, in truth, unshakable. He laughed because he saw how your small, trembling step shattered an entire blueprint the enemy thought was airtight. The halls of eternity vibrated with his joy, and creation itself resounded with approval. Can you imagine how much strength is hidden in what you thought was weakness? Can you grasp the magnitude of how heaven values the unseen over the celebrated? Why is it that heaven values what earth overlooks? Why does one whisper of surrender carry more weight than 1,000 shouts of pride? Could it be that God always measures greatness not in volume, but in obedience? Isaiah 55:9 reminds us, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." That means you're quiet. Yes, today echoed louder than you could ever imagine. And just like ripples that stretch across an endless sea, the echo of your obedience is still moving beyond what your natural eyes can see. The enemy cannot calculate obedience. It breaks every formula of pride and fear. Doesn't this stir something inside you that heaven itself bends to record what men dismiss? He laughed, because what the enemy designed to bury you has become the very soil in which your blessing will grow, like a seed pressed deep into the ground. Darkness thought it had ended your story, but God knew the roots of your destiny were spreading beneath the surface. Isn't it strange how the smallest decisions, the ones we almost despise, often carry the greatest eternal weight? The enemy underestimated you, but heaven never did. And now, the very soil meant to crush you has become sacred ground, watered by God's promises. Even in natura. The acorn that seems so insignificant contains within it the architecture of an oak that outlives storms and centuries. Can you see now why heaven laughed? You've likely been your own harshest critic. You replay your mistakes on the screen of your mind, as if punishment keeps you holy. You measure your progress with rulers that never belonged to you in the first place. You convince yourself that unless your journey looks spectacular, it cannot be sacred. But does heaven ever demand spectacle, or does it simply desire surrender? My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12-9. What you called weakness, heaven called strength. Your hidden prayers were not wasted. They became blueprints of battles already won in the Spirit. Every sigh you thought was ignored was actually recorded in the architecture of eternity. Isn't it powerful to realize that your private struggles are louder than any public applause in the ears of heaven? And history itself testifies. Winston Churchill, the great wartime leader, once said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Churchill was not speaking of the kingdom of God. But the principle remains: continuance in the face of collapse, changes, destinies. Today, your courage to continue in prayer, forgiveness, or hope shifted things far greater than you can see. Heaven recognizes the courage to endure when earth only celebrates the outcomes. And when your story is read in eternity, it will not highlight your applause, it will highlight your faithfulness. How can we not believe that heaven roars with laughter when faith outlasts fear? But to see the contrast, think of Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, who hardened his heart against God. He witnessed plague after plague, mercy after mercy, yet refused to bow. His arrogance drowned not only him, but his entire army in the Red Sea. His legacy became a warning written across eternity. Pride always collapses under the weight of divine laughter. Exodus 15:4 records, Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. One man's defiance became an eternal monument of destruction. And isn't it sobering that the man who once commanded nations is now remembered for drowning under the consequences of his own pride? What the world calls power, heaven often calls futility. So what makes you different? Why does your trembling yes resound where his powerful no was crushed? Because obedience is architecture. It builds bridges between the unseen and the seen, between heaven's will and earth's soil. What looks like a fragile plank under your feet is actually a reinforced arch in heaven's cathedral. And God delights in that hidden structure. In physics, even the smallest vibration can create resonance strong enough to shake massive structures. Likewise, your act of obedience, though small, reverberates in frequencies that dismantle darkness. Do you realize that what you thought was quiet actually thundered across realms? The truth is, chosen one, you will never measure yourself correctly with human eyes. The rulers of this world, be they society's applause, culture's approval, or even your inner critic, will always underestimate the weight of your obedience. But the Lord has promised in Galatians 6-9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." That harvest is already seeded in the soil of your small, yes, today. And every harvest begins with hidden growth, roots beneath the ground, unseen by the eye, yet nourished by heaven's rain. Don't you see? The laughter of God is the sound of your future already secured. So rise, chosen one, stand up from your fears, your regrets, your hidden battles. Heaven laughed because your yes was not weak. It was a declaration of war against the enemy's schemes. Stand tall, because what you thought was small has been magnified in eternity. Today's fragile act is tomorrow's testimony. Today's whisper is tomorrow's thunder. And today's obedience has already become a monument in heaven's courts. And when you rise, you will discover that God's laughter was not just about today, it was about the eternal joy set before you. Heaven counts differently. What you see as failure, God often says as courage hidden in disguise. You notice the stumble and condemn yourself, but He notices the strength it took to step at all. You see a tiny seed buried in dark soil, but He already beholds the forest of legacy it will one day become. You hear your prayer as weak, trembling, almost fading into silence. But He hears the defiant faith it took to utter it. You call your obedience insignificant, yet heaven calls it a tidal wave of impact, stretching across generations you will never meet. Is it not astonishing that what you measure as fragile, heaven records as eternal? And when God looks at you, He is not tallying flaws. He is tracing the line of faith that runs deeper than any stumble. Even the sparrow that falls is seen by Him. Matthew 10:29. So how much more the step of His chosen one? That is why He laughed, not the laughter of sarcasm, but the laughter of recognition, of joy, of triumph. Because today, without realizing it, you frustrated the plans of hell itself. You stood in the very place where others thought you would collapse. You spoke life in a moment when silence was expected. You moved forward when every voice of fear demanded you freeze. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. Deuteronomy 31:6. The enemy's schemes cracked like glass under the weight of your obedience. Isn't it powerful to realize that heaven celebrates moments you almost dismissed? Even the winds and the seas obey Him. Mark 4:41. And today, your obedience joined creation's chorus. Breaking the grip of darkness, heaven's laughter was the sound of hell's defeat, echoing in eternity. Your obedience made God smile. But how can we even begin to grasp such divine joy? Picture creation itself as a mirror when a river carves its way through rock. No one praises the river's weakness, but its persistence. When a wildflower forces its bloom through stone, the world does not mock its fragility, it marvels at its triumph. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever. Isaiah 40:8. In the same way, your step today looked ordinary, but it contained a force that eternity could not ignore. Doesn't that stir you to wonder if every fragile step you take shakes more than you think? Think of how even mountains erode under gentle rain over centuries. Your faith works the same way, slowly but unshakably altering landscapes the enemy thought permanent. Heaven sees beyond the moment into the masterpiece your obedience is forming. Let me give you an image. Think of a toddler wobbling forward, arms flailing, about to topple. The parent is not angry that the child cannot sprint yet. No, the parent erupts with joy because the child is moving at all. That fragile step is celebrated like a victory parade. That is how God looked at you today. Heaven did not record your hesitation, it recorded your courage. And isn't this exactly what the psalmist meant when he wrote, "Though he may stumble, he will not fall. For the Lord upholds him with his hand." Psalm 37-24. You were upheld, and your Father laughed with delight. That laugh was heaven's applause, echoing louder than any ovation earth could ever give. It was the divine equivalent of a symphony rising at the perfect moment, like Handel's Messiah thundering hallelujah after silence. Even your wobble was a song of victory to him. Art and literature echo this truth. In Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the ode to joy erupts not from perfection, but from a long build-up of struggle and tension. The beauty comes not from flawless notes, but from the triumph of resolution. Likewise, Shakespeare once wrote in Hamlet, "The readiness is all. Heaven does not demand sprinting perfection. It rejoices in your readiness to move." Is it possible that God's laughter is the divine ode to joy released over your imperfect, stumbling steps? Imagine Michelangelo's unfinished sculptures, the prisoners, figures struggling to emerge from stone, though incomplete. They are celebrated for their movement toward life. Your life is the same. God celebrates the becoming, not only the finished form. Doesn't that open your eyes to the fact that heaven's applause often begins before you see your own progress? This is why you must rise. Chosen one. You cannot stay bowed under the weight of your own criticism. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Hebrews 12:1. Rise and keep moving, for your stumble is already counted as victory in heaven. Rise, because your step, though fragile, breaks chains unseen. Rise, because God himself has already smiled upon you, and his laughter has sealed the end of the enemy's plans. You are not walking toward victory. You are walking from victory, already declared. And when heaven laughs, it is not because it doubts you, it is because your destiny is already unstoppable. Rise and join that laughter with your faith, for you are God's chosen one, and your story is still unfolding in glory, not with irritation at your imperfection, not with disappointment over what is missing, but with delight at the fact that you stepped at all. Heaven erupted, not because your step was flawless, but because it was faithful. The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love. Psalm 147:11. God is not a harsh architect searching for cracks in your structure. He is the master builder who rejoices when the foundation of faith is laid. Think of it as resonance in physics. Even the smallest vibration can set an entire bridge trembling. Your step may have looked like a faint vibration, but in the courts of heaven, it carried the frequency of eternity. Doesn't it amaze you that the smallest ripple of faith can resound like thunder in God's presence? And here's what you must hold on to. The fact that you are still here is already a testimony. By the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace to me was not without effect. 1 Corinthians 15:10. The enemy's plan for you was never soft, never casual. It was surgical, precise, calculated with cruel intention. It was designed to exhaust your body, drain your spirit, and convince your mind to surrender. It was built like an engineer's blueprint, layer upon layer, to break your faith. But God interrupted the design. You are still breathing, still listening, still seeking him. Doesn't that mean your survival itself is already proof of heaven's defense, even in neuroscience? Survival against constant pressure rewires the brain to build resilience. Spiritually, your endurance has rewired your destiny. The enemy intended to silence your prayers, to bury your hope, to convince you that God had turned away. But instead, your very breath has become a prayer. Your silence has become intercession. Your longing has become proof that faith cannot be buried. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. 2 Corinthians 8, 9. What does it mean that you are still standing when all of hell designed your collapse? What if your mere survival is the loudest declaration of victory heaven could write? Isn't your endurance the evidence that grace has outlasted every weapon formed against you? And even history echoes this truth. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and Holocaust survivor, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." He endured horrors designed to erase hope. Yet his survival and inner faith became the very testimony that darkness cannot erase human dignity. In the same way, chosen one, your survival is not small, it is monumental. Like Frankl, you carry proof that even in the darkest prison, the soul can remain free in God. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. 2 Timothy 1-7. Could it be that your very presence right now is not weakness, but a proclamation that God has already written your victory in His architecture of time? So rise. Chosen one, do not belittle your survival. Do not despise your small steps. Heaven has already celebrated what you call inadequate. Rise. Because your faith is not measured in perfection, but in persistence. Rise. Because the laughter of God today has sealed the futility of every plan the enemy designed. Rise. For the very fact that you are here, breathing and seeking Him, is the undeniable proof that grace has already carried you through the battlefield. And when heaven laughs, it is announcing not just your survival, it is declaring your unstoppable future. Every time you wake up and choose faith, even when that faith trembles like a candle in the wind, God laughs. Because the enemy lost again. Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed. For His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Lamentations 3:22-23. Your existence today is not accidental survival. It is divine proof that God's hand is still carrying you. The fact that you are still standing is a testimony written in invisible ink across eternity. And if the enemy could not take you out yesterday, imagine the dread in his camp when he sees that God has already prepared something greater for you tomorrow. Doesn't it shake you to realize that your fragile yes terrifies the kingdom of darkness more than its loudest threats? The sound of your breath is proof that grace is louder than death. And even your survival is a sermon that angels rejoice to hear. This is why you cannot underestimate obedience in the small things. Heaven's economy does not mirror the applause of earth. The world only claps for visible milestones, the degree earned, the promotion announced, the breakthrough polished for social approval. But God celebrates the hidden, the unseen, the moments no camera records. Your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Matthew 6:6. The whispered prayer in your kitchen that carried more power than a sermon. The forgiveness you extended that no one ever clapped for. The quiet sacrifice that cost you more than you dare admit. Isn't it incredible that God crowns what the world ignores? And what if those small, hidden moments are the very scaffolding upon which your destiny is being built? What if the applause of heaven over your silence outweighs the applause of nations for someone's noise? Voices from history echo this truth. Mother Teresa, known for her tireless work among the poor, once said, "Be faithful in small things, because it is in them that your strength lies. Her life proved that heaven never overlooks hidden obedience. She changed the world, not through spectacle, but through countless unseen acts of love. And isn't your life, chosen one, a reflection of the same principle that your hidden faith is louder in heaven than any earthly achievement? Think about it. A single act of compassion can outlive centuries, like light traveling through the universe long after the flame has burned out. What if your smallest kindness today is still illuminating generations to come? Doesn't this reveal how much weight God places on what the world calls insignificant? But there is also a warning woven into this truth. Think of Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 who walked closest to Jesus. He witnessed miracles, heard divine teaching, and carried the trust of holding the money bag. Yet for a handful of silver, he betrayed the Savior. His name, once honored as a disciple, became synonymous with betrayal for all eternity. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him, but woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. Matthew 26-24. His story is a reminder that despising the small acts of obedience can lead to eternal ruin. Isn't it sobering to realize that one hidden choice can either release heaven's laughter or carve a legacy of shame? Every compromise is an architect's crack that weakens the entire structure. Judas thought 30 silver coins would secure his future, but instead they purchased his downfall. Isn't this proof that what you do in secret writes your eternal headline? So rise. Chosen one, stop despising your small steps. Do not belittle the hidden sacrifices that only God sees. Who dares despise the day of small things? Zechariah 4:10. Heaven is already rejoicing over your faithfulness. Every quiet act has unsettled the plans of darkness and invited God's smile into your tomorrow. Rise, because what you thought was ordinary obedience has already shaken eternity. Rise, for the throne has already laughed with joy at your victory. And rise, because when you move forward, you are not just taking steps, you are rewriting the story the enemy tried to finish. Today's hidden act is tomorrow's eternal crown. And heaven has already applauded. Every one of those hidden moments is written in eternity. Every quiet act that no one applauded is etched in the books of heaven as clearly as lightning across the night sky. Every whispered prayer provokes heaven's delight. And every sacrifice shakes the foundations of darkness. For God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. Hebrews 6:10. So, hear me clearly. Chosen one, if you think today was wasted, if you think your effort went unseen, if you think your obedience was too small to matter, you are mistaken. Because heaven already responded, God already laughed. And his laughter is not fleeting emotion, but the echo of victory written before time began. Isn't it humbling to realize that what you call too small is already resounding in the corridors of eternity? Even the stars, invisible in daylight, never cease to shine. So it is with your hidden acts. They burn on, whether the world notices or not. And that laugh means the victory has already begun. The Lord will march out like a champion. Like a warrior, he will stir up his zeal. With a shout, he will raise the battle cry and will triumph over his enemies. Isaiah 42:13. If you could have seen what happened in the unseen when you made your move today, you would never doubt yourself again. What appeared like a faint tremor on earth registered as an earthquake in heaven. What you felt as a whisper became a roar before the throne. Isn't it staggering to think that your obedience reverberates like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples across generations yet unborn? What if the prayer you prayed tonight will one day become the shelter of your great-grandchildren? And what if the seed of faith you planted today grows into a tree whose shade will comfort souls you'll never meet? Wouldn't that change the way you view every step of obedience? Creation testifies to this mystery. When the tiniest bee gathers pollen, it unknowingly ensures the survival of entire forests. When a single drop of rain falls into dry ground, it can awaken seeds that have slept for decades. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. Isaiah 55:10-11. Doesn't this reveal that what seems small is never small in God's economy? Could it be that your simple act of obedience today carries the same hidden power, sustaining life you cannot yet see? Just as coral reefs are built by countless unseen creatures, layering stone upon stone, so your hidden faith is building an eternal reef of testimony beneath the surface of time. And doesn't this prove that even what feels invisible is forming a cathedral of glory? And even art reflects this eternal truth. In Mozart's Requiem, the softest passages carry the most piercing weight, proving that what is whispered can still break through the silence with divine force. Likewise, in Victor Hugo's Les Misérables, a single act of mercy by the bishop toward Jean Valjean rewrote a man's destiny. Heaven's laughter over you today is just like that, an eruption of joy at a simple act that rewrites futures. Doesn't this open your eyes to how profoundly heaven values what earth calls insignificant? Every brushstroke in Michelangelo's frescoes, even the smallest detail, contributed to the awe of the whole masterpiece. So too, your smallest actions are brushstrokes on the canvas of eternity, and the artist who sees the entire mural already celebrates the beauty of what you thought was incomplete. So rise, chosen one. Do not dismiss your hidden obedience. Do not despise the whisper that heaven heard as a roar. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Rise, because heaven's laughter is not only joy, it is the sound of battle already won. Rise, because your small today has already thundered in eternity's tomorrow. Rise, for God has laughed, and his laughter has sealed your victory. And rise knowing this: if creation applauds, if history testifies, if heaven rejoices, then nothing the enemy plots can erase what God has already written. Your hidden obedience is already eternal light, burning in the archives of heaven. God laughed because the very strategy designed to end you is now unraveling at the seams. What was meant to be a flawless design of destruction is collapsing like a poorly calculated equation in physics, unstable, unable to bear the weight of God's intervention. That laugh is not passive. It is power. It is the resonance of heaven shaking through time, announcing that this battle has already been decided. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Isaiah 54:17. Doesn't it amaze you that what looked airtight to the enemy was already riddled with cracks under God's gaze? The very structure built against you has become evidence that only heaven builds foundations that endure. Even in astronomy, stars that look eternal eventually collapse into nothing. So it is with every dark plan set against you. You have to understand something deeper. The enemy studies patterns. He is like a strategist, calculating probabilities, predicting outcomes based on your history, on how you reacted yesterday, last week, last year. He builds his traps the way an architect builds scaffolding, counting on your silence, your exhaustion, your hesitation. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. John 10:10. But today, something shifted in the equation. You broke resonance with despair and aligned with heaven's frequency. Isn't it powerful to realize that one choice can break an entire cycle? That a single act of courage can fracture a design hell spent years constructing? In psychology, even the smallest interruption in a negative cycle rewires the brain toward resilience. So too, your obedience today rewired eternity's script. The enemy cannot predict a soul aligned with God, because grace always moves outside his calculations. And today, you broke the pattern. You did something the enemy did not anticipate. You gave when you had nothing left to give. You spoke life when silence seemed safer. You rose when sinking felt inevitable. For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. Proverbs 24:16. That act triggered something beyond your comprehension. It was the breaking of a cycle, the collapse of a stronghold. Doesn't this prove that obedience is more than action? It is spiritual disruption. What if your small yes today was the tremor that shook down walls of opposition built for generations? What if the moment you thought was ordinary is actually the key heaven had been waiting for? Even in seismology, the smallest quake can shift tectonic plates for centuries. Your step of faith did the same in the unseen. It's like a chess match where the opponent smirks, believing they have cornered you, only for you to make a move that flips the entire board. The laughter of God is heaven's way of declaring checkmate before you even see the full board yourself. And doesn't that echo what Paul wrote? Thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 15:57. In physics, resonance occurs when even a small push at the right frequency topples structures far greater than the force applied. Your obedience was that exact resonance, collapsing schemes that were never built to withstand heaven's frequency. And think of it, the enemy thought he had the blueprint, but heaven always holds the master plan. Isn't it astonishing that a single move of faith dismantles years of demonic calculation? In our modern world, the same principle is seen. Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years, once said, "I never lose. I either win or learn." He shattered the enemy's expectation that imprisonment would silence him. Instead, he emerged stronger, carrying a victory far beyond his oppressor's calculations. In the same way, your refusal to stay down has undone predictions hell made about you. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. 1 John 4:4. Doesn't it reveal that breaking the enemy's pattern is not just survival, it is prophecy in motion? History remembers Mandela, not for the years he was caged, but for the freedom he carried out of that cage. Heaven will remember you, not for the seasons of silence, but for the breakthrough that followed. And when God laughs, it is because he sees that very breakthrough already written. So rise. Chosen one, do not underestimate what just happened. Heaven laughed because the board has been flipped, the equation rewritten, the trap dismantled. Rise, because what looked like defeat has already been declared victory. Rise, because God's laughter is the soundtrack of your breakthrough. And rise, because you are no longer bound by old cycles. You are a living disruption to the enemy's design. The walls of Jericho fell, not because of human strength, but because obedience released heaven's sound. Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Joshua 6:16. Rise, for heaven has already shouted, and your steps have already shaken the earth. That's why God laughed, because he saw what the enemy could never perceive. Your obedience has already shifted the outcome. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. And here is the beauty of it. Heaven does not only respond to massive, spectacular gestures Heaven responds to faith. Heaven responds to purity. Heaven responds to truth. One whispered, "Yes," carries more weight than 1,000 loud declarations with no heart. Isn't it astonishing that the smallest seed of obedience carries eternal significance, while the loudest displays of pride collapse into dust? What if the prayer you thought was weak today is already echoing as a decree in heaven? Heaven's laughter means the echo has already been sealed into eternity's architecture. Angels marvel when fragile humans release a yes that shakes unseen kingdoms. One act of integrity in the shadows carries more authority than 100 public performances done for recognition. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. This is why you must stop minimizing yourself. You have to stop treating your obedience as though it only matters when people notice. Isn't it tragic how quickly we compare our hidden battles to someone else's visible triumphs? And yet, what if your quiet yes has already shifted nations in ways you'll never know, even in silence? Heaven hears louder than earth ever could. And when you stand firm in hidden places, your faith is like a lighthouse that shines unseen, but guides ships safely through the storm. Doesn't that image make your unseen victories feel weightier? History itself testifies to this. Pope John Paul II, standing against the tide of oppression in Eastern Europe, once declared, "Do not be afraid. Open the doors wide for Christ." His strength was not in spectacle but in conviction, and his words ignited movements of freedom across nations. In the same way, your conviction, even when no one claps, is already rewriting futures. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life. James 1:12. Doesn't it move you to realize that heaven crowns hidden faithfulness long before the world recognizes it? And if one man's steadfast voice could ripple across continents, how much more can your obedience ripple across generations? Your unseen act may already be the seed of revival in a land you've never stepped foot in, but let us not ignore the other side. King Saul, Israel's first anointed king, instead of obeying fully, he chose partial obedience for the sake of appearance. He spared what God commanded him to destroy. Valuing the applause of men above the approval of God, his kingdom crumbled, his peace dissolved, and his name became a warning. To obey is better than sacrifice. 1 Samuel 15:22. Isn't it sobering that one man's compromise cost him his throne, while one shepherd boy's secret worship secured him a crown? Saul teaches us that minimizing obedience is not harmless, it is catastrophic. Every time obedience is traded for applause, the foundation weakens. Doesn't that remind you that a single crack in a dam, ignored long enough, can flood an entire valley? In the same way, compromise that feels small today can collapse a destiny tomorrow. So, rise. Chosen one. Stop comparing your hidden obedience to the highlight reels of others. Stop diminishing what heaven has magnified. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. Zechariah 4:10. Rise, because your quiet yes has more weight in eternity than the loudest applause on earth. Rise, because heaven has already responded with laughter, and that laughter means victory. And rise knowing this: you are not defined by how the world measures you, but by how heaven delights in you. Your steps may feel ordinary, but in God's hands, they build eternal cathedrals of glory. When heaven laughs, it is not only joy, it is prophecy fulfilled, declaring that your obedience will outlast kingdoms. Heaven isn't measuring the noise. Heaven is measuring the depth. And today you prove that there is depth in you. The Lord searches every heart and understands every desire and every thought. 1 Chronicles 28:9. Maybe you felt unseen, as though your story blended into the shadows. Maybe you wrestled with the idea that you're just surviving, not advancing. But survival is not small, it is sacred. Survival is testimony. Every breath you take declares, I am still here. Isn't it astonishing that each inhale is proof that death has been denied? Each heartbeat is a hymn that hell cannot silence. And each day you endure becomes another stone laid in the architecture of your eternal story. Doesn't this remind you that heaven values foundations even more than facades? Every step you take whispers, the plan against me has failed. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalm 56:3. And every time you rise in the morning and choose to continue, heaven leans forward, rejoicing, declaring, they are still standing. Doesn't that stir something in you that the angels themselves are moved not by spectacle but by your persistence? You underestimate your resilience only because you've lived inside it for so long. Yet God sees what you cannot. Could it be that your very survival is already the victory song written into your destiny? Each step forward, no matter how small, is heaven's reminder to hell that its blueprints have already failed. And doesn't that prove your existence alone is warfare in motion? Nature itself reflects this truth. The oak tree that towers over fields once survived as a fragile seedling battered by wind and rain. The salmon that swims upstream against impossible currents proves that movement itself is triumph. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Psalm 92:12. Doesn't this show that survival is never passive? It is momentum in disguise. The very fact that you continue is evidence that life is not finished with you. And heaven rejoices each time you endure. Isn't survival the soil from which greatness blooms? Even deserts prove this. After years of barrenness, a single rain awakens thousands of hidden blossoms. So too, your endurance holds seeds of glory that will erupt in due season. Art and music whisper the same message. In Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the opening movement is not thunderous, it is quiet, steady, almost fragile, yet its haunting depth has outlasted centuries, proving that endurance carries more weight than noise. Likewise, in the ancient play Antigone by Sophocles, the heroine's persistence against impossible odds reveals that survival itself is defiance against darkness. Isn't it remarkable that heaven values the same thing, that your quiet resilience is already rewriting eternity? Could it be that your survival is the sacred melody heaven has been waiting to hear? And just as the soft brush strokes in a painting often outlive bold lines, your hidden faith will echo far longer than loud but shallow deeds. Doesn't this mean your survival is already art in the eyes of God? So rise, chosen one. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. 2 Corinthians 4:8. Stop underestimating the miracle of your own endurance. Rise, because what tried to destroy you has failed. Rise, because heaven's laughter has already declared the enemy's plans broken. And rise, because your survival is not merely existence, it is prophecy, it is warfare, it is testimony. Today's breath is proof of tomorrow's destiny, and God has already sealed it with His delight. And when you rise, remember, even the faintest spark in the night sky tells the universe that darkness has not won. You are that spark, and heaven's laughter is the sound of your flame being fanned into fire. That alone makes your story a living victory. In all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Romans 8:37. And now it's not just about survival anymore, it's about acceleration. Because when God laughs, it's not only joy, It's a signal. It means momentum has shifted. It means the season has turned. It means the very ground beneath you is preparing to yield what you've been waiting for. Doesn't it shake you to realize that the same ground where you once wept is about to become the soil of your harvest? What if every delay was not denial, but preparation for momentum? In architecture, even the strongest bridges require tension in their cables. Your tension is proof that strength is being built for what's ahead. And when the Lord laughs, it is like the engineer striking the final note that confirms the entire design will hold under pressure. That's why you may feel the tension rising. That's why your spirit senses something bigger is circling, because the laugh of heaven is not quiet. It reverberates like frequency through the atmosphere, stirring the unseen, bending what physics calls timelines and what faith calls appointed seasons. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. Ecclesiastes 3:1. Doesn't it amaze you that heaven's laughter can disrupt history itself? Shifting the weight of entire battles, it stirs the air. It disrupts timelines. It pulls breakthroughs into the present, and it started with you. Could it be that your obedience was the catalyst that triggered heaven's frequency, that the laugh of God is heaven's way of saying, now everything accelerates? And isn't that why your spirit feels the tremors, as if eternity is already leaning forward? Think of it this way. Every small step you've taken has been like dropping a stone into water. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough. Matthew 13:33. Ripples form. Circles expand outward, reaching farther than your eye can trace. Isn't it extraordinary that what looks like a small disturbance at the surface becomes a chain reaction beneath? In physics, resonance teaches us that one vibration can synchronize and shift entire systems. In the same way, your small steps of faith are reverberating into realms you cannot see. What if your whispered prayer today set in motion an answer years into the future? What if your trembling yes is already rewriting chapters you haven't yet stepped into? And what if heaven's laughter is the sound of those unseen ripples colliding into breakthrough? Modern history confirms this. The architect Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the greatest minds in design, once said, "The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes." His vision was not about immediate spectacle, but about creating structures that stood the test of time, harmonizing with their environment. In the same way, your obedience today is not fragile. It is timeless architecture, designed by heaven to outlast storms. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm 127:1. Doesn't that show you that God is building something with your life that no enemy blueprint can topple? Just as Wright believed beauty grows with time, heaven knows your steps grow heavier with eternal glory. Even if you cannot see the full cathedral of your destiny now, heaven already celebrates its completion. And isn't that reason enough to keep building? Brick by brick, with faith, so rise. Chosen one. Stop thinking survival was the end of your story. Acceleration has already begun. Rise. Because heaven's laughter has already shifted momentum in your favor. Rise. Because your tension is not a curse, but the pull of destiny stretching you forward. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Isaiah 43:18-19. Rise. Because the stones you've dropped into the waters of faith are creating ripples of victory across eternity. And rise. Because your story is no longer just about endurance, it is about divine momentum breaking into your present moment. When heaven laughs, it is not only remembering your past, but also announcing your future. And that future has already begun to unfold beneath your very steps. At first, it seems like only a small splash, but then the ripples spread outward, farther and wider than you thought possible. Today's act, the one you thought no one would notice, sent ripples through eternity. Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6-9. Angels moved. Shan loosened. Doors began to respond, and seeds that looked buried forever began to stir. Doesn't it amaze you that one unseen decision in a hidden moment can awaken an entire future? And while you can't see all of it yet, you will, because heaven does not laugh at something without cause. God's laughter is not empty. It is the announcement of movement already underway. Even the soil beneath your feet testifies, for every seed germinates unseen before it breaks into light. What you thought was silence was already heaven's orchestra tuning for your breakthrough. That sound carries weight. It carries promise. It shakes what seemed immovable and breathes into what appeared lifeless. For the word of the Lord is right and true. He is faithful in all he does. Psalm 33-4. This is the part I need you to hold close. If God is laughing, then heaven has already secured what you thought was fragile. Doesn't it stir your spirit to realize that heaven celebrates battles you don't even know you've already won? Stop doubting the timing. Stop doubting your strength. Stop doubting whether you're enough. Could it be that your constant questioning is the only thing delaying the peace already promised? When I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians 12:10. The sound of God's laughter is not random. It is like thunder after lightning. Proof that the storm has already shifted. And if heaven is rejoicing, why should your heart remain in fear? History whispers the same truth. The artist Vincent van Gogh, whose work was rejected in his lifetime, once said, "Great things are done by a series of small things brought together." He could not see the impact of his brushstrokes while alive. Yet today his art inspires millions. In the same way, your small acts, your whispered prayers, your hidden faith are brushstrokes on eternity's canvas. Doesn't this prove that heaven celebrates what earth overlooks? If a man's rejected paintings could ripple across centuries, how much more will your obedience ripple across eternity when backed by the Spirit of God? Every brushstroke mattered in the masterpiece. Every hidden act of faith matters in God's grand design. And doesn't that tell you that nothing done in faith is ever wasted? But we also see the opposite. Demas, a companion of Paul in ministry, once named with honor in Scripture, yet later Paul lamented, "Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted me." 2 Timothy 4:10. His story warns us that abandoning faith for worldly gain leaves only emptiness as legacy. Isn't it sobering that one man's hidden compromise erased his testimony from history's light? Just as obedience releases ripples of blessing, disobedience releases ripples of destruction. Doesn't this make your small yes feel even more sacred? What seemed to Demas like gain became the very chain that erased his name from glory. And if a single compromise can destroy legacy, how much more can a single act of obedience build one? So rise, chosen one, cast not away your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. Hebrews 10:35. If heaven has already celebrated your step, then the victory is no longer a question of if, it's only a matter of when. Rise, because heaven's laughter is already echoing over your life. Rise, because your small yes has already started waves that will reach beyond your lifetime. And rise knowing this: what began as a small splash has become a tidal wave of testimony, and heaven has already declared the ending victory belongs to you. Every step you take now is no longer survival but acceleration, carrying you into the future God has written. And doesn't it stir your soul to know that eternity is already applauding you forward? You might have been taught to only celebrate at the finish line, but heaven celebrates at the very first step. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Psalm 37-23. The journey is sacred. The progress itself is holy. And when you realize that, you stop carrying the crushing weight of not being there yet and start walking with the confidence of already choosing the narrow path. Doesn't it change everything when you understand that God applauds the beginning, not just the end? What if your trembling first step today is more precious in eternity than a grand finale years later? Even the smallest flame, once lit, proves that darkness has not won. And if heaven claps for the flame, how much louder will it rejoice when the fire spreads into your destiny? That shift changes everything. You stop living for the unstable approval of people and start moving in the unshakable approval of God. Am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? If I was still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Galatians 1:10. Isn't it freeing to realize that divine delight outweighs human applause? And when you carry that truth, nothing can intimidate you anymore. Could it be that the enemy's greatest weapon was never your weakness, but your fear of being unseen? Once that fear breaks, boldness rises. Just as mountains cannot be shaken by the wind, so your faith cannot be moved when rooted in God's approval. And when you walk in that truth, you begin to discover a strength you never knew was inside you. So let me leave you with this. God saw you today. He saw the hidden effort, the quiet yes, the trembling obedience. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Matthew 6:6. He saw the moment you thought was too small to matter, and he magnified it in eternity. Isn't it humbling that what you almost dismissed as insignificant has already stirred heaven's celebration? And doesn't it prove that heaven's applause begins long before earth ever recognizes your name? Every whispered yes was recorded like a note in a symphony, woven into the eternal music of God's plan. And one day, when the full song is played, you will see that no note was wasted. Nature itself echoes this truth. The caterpillar's slow crawl is just as celebrated as the butterfly's flight, because both are stages of transformation. The first crack of a seed beneath the soil is just as holy as the towering oak it will one day become. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Philippians 1:6. Doesn't this reveal that heaven treasures the beginning of your becoming, not just the conclusion? Could it be that your small progress today is already the fragrance of a harvest that will outlive you? Rivers that carve canyons begin with a single drop of water, finding its path. In the same way, your obedience, though small, has begun a journey that nothing can stop. Art and literature whisper the same mystery. In Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, the beauty of the ballet is not only found in its grand finale, but in the fragile, trembling first movements that set the stage. Likewise, in Shakespeare's King Lear, the king's journey is not defined by his end, but by the steps of transformation along the way. Doesn't this show us that heaven is never waiting for perfection, it delights in progression? And what if your trembling obedience today is already the prologue of a masterpiece heaven has written? Every act of faith is like a brushstroke. The whole canvas may not be clear yet, but the artist is smiling at every detail, and one day you will stand before the masterpiece and realize it was worth every uncertain step. So, rise, chosen one. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, Let us throw off everything that hinders and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Hebrews 12:1. Rise, because heaven's laughter is proof that your beginning has already been celebrated. Rise, because your trembling, yes, today, carries the same weight as tomorrow's victory. Rise, because God Himself saw you and declared it enough, and rise knowing this: the journey itself is already holy ground, and every step you take shakes eternity. Even the dust beneath your feet is testifying. They are still walking. And doesn't that mean heaven's song is already playing for you right now? That laugh means your obedience has far more power than you could ever measure with human instruments. It is not simply a smile of approval, it is a cosmic resonance. Like the vibration of strings on a grand symphony that fills the architecture of heaven itself. Imagine it, the creator of galaxies, leaning back, not in weariness but in delight. His laughter echoing across dimensions, shaking the unseen frequencies of your life into alignment. What could be stronger than that sound? What could be more secure than knowing the Sovereign Lord is not anxious about your tomorrow, but rejoicing in the certainty of your triumph? And when you realize this, even the smallest act of obedience feels like a stone dropped into eternity's ocean, creating ripples no adversary can stop. His laughter is proof that nothing you do in faith is ever wasted, but woven into an eternal design greater than your sight. That laugh means the outcome has already been rewritten in your favor. Even before you saw the first sign of breakthrough, Scripture reminds us, the Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Psalm 126:3. Just as rivers carve through stone with patience, His laughter carves through your doubts with eternal assurance. Every whisper of insecurity, every shadow of fear is drowned out when you realize the King is not pacing nervously, but is enthroned in joy. And tell me, how can any accusation, any delay, or any opposition stand when the author of history is already celebrating your victory? His delight is like a banner raised over your life, declaring to heaven and earth that the verdict has already been decided. The future is not written in chalk that can be erased, but in fire that cannot be quenched. Carry that picture in your spirit. The Creator of all things, the one who calls stars by name, leaning back on His throne, smiling and laughing over your story. Isaiah proclaim, He who sits in the heavens laughs, the Lord holds them in derision. Psalm 2-4. Reminding us that no plot of the enemy, no weapon formed against you, can alter what God has already sealed. Like the stained glass windows of a cathedral refracting sunlight, His laughter refracts every dark circumstance into colors of promise. What then can stop the chosen ones? What storm can erase the joy He has already planted in your destiny? And when you close your eyes in prayer, imagine those windows flooding your soul with sacred light. For His joy is not only above you, but within you. His laughter is both shield and sword, surrounding you with an atmosphere the enemy cannot pierce. Let that sound become your confidence. Let it reverberate like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat, the divine metronome, keeping your steps in time with heaven. Think of the laws of physics. When two sound waves collide in perfect resonance, the frequency amplifies. That is what His laughter does in your life. It amplifies your courage until fear becomes silence. Jesus Himself declared, "Be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." John 16:33. If He has overcome, then His laughter is not empty. It is evidence of victory. Will you dare to live as if you already hold that victory in your hands? Every decision made with that sound in your spirit becomes boldness in action, clarity in thought, and endurance in trial. It is the anthem of heaven stitched into your soul, reminding you that you are never walking alone. Let it drown out every lie, every doubt, every whisper that tells you you're behind. Think of how nature itself illustrates this truth. When spring returns after the harshest winter, the ground once silent with frost bursts suddenly into blossom, as if creation itself remembered the laughter of God. In the same way, your spirit is not bound by the season you are in, because the eternal sound of His joy overrides every earthly limitation. And when you feel surrounded, remember the words of Nehemiah, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." Nehemiah 8:10. Could there be any stronger foundation than that? Lies will collapse like brittle branches before the wind, but His laughter remains like the trunk of an ancient oak, immovable, rooted, alive. Every mocking voice fades when compared to the sound of eternity rejoicing in your destiny. Because if the King is laughing, it means the ending has already been secured. Think of Shakespeare's plays, where the final act often transforms tragedy into resolution. How much more does the author of eternity ensure that your story is not left unfinished? The Apostle Paul affirms, "Thanks be to God, He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." 1 Corinthians 15:57. His laughter is not mere amusement, it is the symphony of certainty, a divine declaration that the seal has been set. Who, then, can overturn it? Your enemies may write scripts of defeat, but heaven edits the ending with strokes of triumph. And just as music crescendos toward resolution, so your life rises toward the finale God has already composed. And dear chosen one, it ends with your victory, not the shallow kind of victory that fades like applause, but the kind engraved into eternity's walls. Pope John Paul II once said, "Do not abandon yourselves to despair. We are the Easter people, and hallelujah is our song." His words remind us that the Christian life is not built on anxiety, but on resurrection laughter, the same kind of laughter Sarah once knew when God gave her Isaac in her old age. As written, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Genesis 21:6. If Sarah's barren years ended in joy, will not your weary nights end the same? And when your testimony is written, it will not be remembered for the tears of struggle, but for the laughter of deliverance. What began as sorrow will be rebranded as joy, stamped forever with heaven's seal. When a word like this lands, your spirit longs to remain in the presence of it, like an athlete pausing in the quiet of the stadium after the roar of victory. Your heart craves the stillness of being wrapped in divine delight. That is why I created Simplified Serenity, a channel with music crafted for prayer, meditation, and deep rest, because even sound carries frequency, and frequency carries healing. Every note is a humble attempt to echo what the heavens already release, the laughter of God resonating over your life. Stand up, chosen one. Walk forward in the confidence that heaven is not silent. Heaven is not anxious, heaven is laughing. And if heaven laughs, then your tomorrow is safe. And if tomorrow is safe, then today deserves your peace. There are sounds in heaven rarely spoken of light. We know the thunder of God's voice that split seas and shook mountains. We know the roar of angels warring in unseen realms. But today, chosen one, something strange happened. The Creator Himself laughed over you, not the laugh of mockery, not sarcasm, but the deep, resonant laugh of a Father who sees you trusting, stumbling, trying, and still moving forward. That laugh means your obedience has more power than you realize. That laugh means the outcome has already been rewritten in your favor. Carry that picture in your spirit. the King of Kings leaning back, smiling, and bursting into laughter because of your faith. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. And today his joy was stirred by you. And is it not beautiful that the universe responds to his joy? As if the stars themselves join in chorus when heaven laughs. That is the power hidden in the smallest act of faith. To understand this, look at the testimony of the famous painter Vincent van Gogh. Though misunderstood in his time, he once said, "Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together, just as his hidden strokes built masterpieces." Your hidden acts today, your decision to pray instead of panic, your choice to forgive instead of fight, painted joy across the heavens. What you thought was small became a canvas that made God himself smile. Heaven does not measure greatness the way earth does. It measures it in faith, in love, in hidden obedience. And so you must ask yourself, if my smallest decisions are already echoing in eternity, what kind of echoes do I want to leave behind? Remember, even the whisper of a single brushstroke can define the meaning of an entire painting. Likewise, the single prayer you prayed in silence may shift destinies you will never see until eternity. But let us also see the contrast. Take the example of Judas Iscariot, a man who walked with Jesus, yet chose greed in the shadows. His decision to betray for silver seemed like a private scheme, but it echoed into eternal shame. He thought he gained wealth, but instead he lost his name, his peace, and his very life. Judas stands as proof that hidden choices, whether faith or betrayal, are never hidden to heaven. Where your act today drew laughter from God, his act drew sorrow and judgment. The difference lies not in how public the action was, but in whom it aligned with, as Jesus warned. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Matthew 16:26. And if Judas, who saw miracles with his own eyes, still fell by hidden compromise, how much more careful must we be in guarding the small decisions of our daily walk? The smallest turn of the heart can set the trajectory of eternity. History itself affirms this principle. The life of Harriet Tubman, the woman who escaped slavery, yet risked her life again and again to lead others into freedom. She once said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." Even in the silence of her suffering, heaven was shaping a testimony that would outlive her. Likewise, your quiet endurance today, your refusal to let despair take root, becomes a declaration that makes the heavens resound with laughter. Could it be that what you call ordinary struggle is actually the stage for heaven's extraordinary celebration? Tubman's courage reminds us that even in the midnight of history, purpose is being carved. And when her chains were broken, they did not just free her, they ignited generations with the flame of liberation. Could your present battle be preparing you to inspire others tomorrow? So, chosen ones, let this truth settle deep. Heaven celebrates not your perfection, but your direction. Every time you choose faith over fear, silence over gossip, surrender over pride, God's laughter rolls like thunder over your life. It drowns out the lies, silences the whispers of defeat, and secures the ending in your favor. What feels ordinary to you is extraordinary in eternity. Well done, good and faithful servant. Matthew 25-23 will one day be the echo of this very laughter. Your strange, hidden act today wrote a melody in heaven's halls, a sound that says, "Victory belongs to this one." And maybe, when history records your life, It won't just mention what you achieved, but the joy you stirred in God's heart. What greater legacy could there be than being remembered as the one who made the Almighty laugh? Chosen ones. The strange act you did today was like a seed falling into soil at the exact right season. You thought it was unnoticed. Yet heaven saw it as the rain sees the parched desert, transformative, life-giving, and irreversible. Just as a single drop awakens an entire valley of wildflowers, your one choice awakened joy in the throne room of God. That laughter was not shallow. It was the deep sound of eternity, acknowledging that even in the face of your weakness, you moved in alignment with His will. And when God laughs, every scheme of the enemy trembles. For His joy is a weapon sharper than any blade. The Lord laughs at the wicked, for He knows their day is coming. Psalm 37:13. And if His laughter breaks the pride of darkness, then imagine how powerful it is when it is released in response to you. Could it be that heaven itself is celebrating a victory you didn't even know you won? Think of nature. When a tree stands alone in the forest, it looks fragile. Winds strike it from every side. Storms bend it. Yet its roots press deeper into unseen soil. That hidden anchoring is what makes it unshakable. So it is with you. Your act today, though small on the surface, sent roots deep into covenant ground, and God, watching, burst into laughter the way the earth rejoices when spring bursts through winter's grip. Creation itself whispers the same story: resilience, faith, and alignment always awaken joy in the one who designed them. The rivers clap their hands, the mountains sing, the fields exult in quiet praise. Psalm 98:8. Could it be that your unseen obedience today was the very rainfall heaven was waiting for? Could it be that God's laughter is proof your roots are already bearing fruit you cannot yet see? This truth has been echoed even in art and culture. In C.S. Lewis's masterpiece, The Chronicles of Narnia, Aslan's laughter carries both strength and gentleness. It terrifies the darkness, yet comforts the faithful. When the lion laughs, winter begins to break, and the frozen land begins to thaw. Likewise, your act today, whether forgiving an enemy, choosing silence instead of anger, or stepping into faith despite fear, was a spark that set divine joy ablaze. Heaven rejoiced in that moment, not because of its grandeur, but because of its purity. And just as Aslan's laughter broke the spell of endless winter, so God's laughter over you breaks cycles you didn't even realize were ending. Could it be that your simple act has shifted an entire spiritual season in your favor? And let us not forget the divine paradox. The world often expects thunder when God is pleased. Yet sometimes He responds with laughter. The sound is lighter than storms, yet heavier than galaxies. More disarming than war, yet more powerful than fire. Like the sudden burst of dawn chasing away shadows. His laughter over you today carried the weight of 1,000 victories. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In His love, He will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Zephaniah 3:17. If He sings and laughs over you, then no curse can remain. No shame can stand. No failure can define you. His laughter is a seal that what you did today, however small, is eternally significant. And this should stir your heart to ask, what if every small act of obedience has the power to make heaven rejoice? What if even your hidden faith is already echoing in eternity's song, chosen ones? The act you made today was like striking a hidden tuning fork in the halls of eternity. In physics, when two frequencies align, They create resonance so strong that even glass can shatter under its power. Your obedience became that frequency, one that matched heaven's wavelength and caused a ripple impossible to silence. God's laughter was the sound of that resonance reaching perfection, like an architect stepping back from a cathedral and marveling at how every stone found its place. And what is laughter from God, if not the echo of divine harmony, confirming that your step aligned the blueprint of heaven with the reality of earth? The Lord's plans stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations. Psalm 33:11. That is why his laughter carried not only joy, but assurance, reminding the universe that nothing can erase what he has sealed. The angels stood still, for laughter in heaven is rarer than thunder, but far more powerful. It is no different than architecture's hidden laws. A keystone in an arch may seem small, but without it, the whole structure collapses. Your strange action today was that keystone. It completed the ark of faith you've been building silently. Heaven saw it, and the Almighty burst into laughter the way a master builder smiles when the final stone holds the weight of the whole. That laughter wasn't amusement. It was the recognition that what once seemed fragile has now become unbreakable. Could it be that your hidden gesture today has locked the entire structure of your destiny into place? Could it be that God's laughter was the sound of walls that once opposed you finally crumbling? And if so, how many battles of your past were secretly preparing you to place that one stone at this exact moment? The divine design was never random. It was always leading here. Psychology speaks of such moments. The human brain releases dopamine, not only in triumph, but also in anticipation, when the subconscious recognizes alignment between effort and outcome. If even our minds, designed by him, rejoice in micro-victories, how much more does heaven explode with joy when eternity itself witnesses your choice? God's laughter is not a reaction, it is creation. A release of energy that shapes the unseen into form. It is as though the cosmic architect himself just signed your blueprint with eternal approval. And now, the structure of your future stands taller than before. The one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it. 1 Thessalonians 5:24. This is why no attack, nor delay, no accusation can cancel what was set in motion. Once heaven laughs, no demon can rewrite the script. Once God smiles, the storm loses its grip. And to anchor this truth in the real world, Michelangelo, the Italian artist and sculptor, he once said, "The sculpture is already complete within the marble block. Before I start my work, it is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material." In the same way, your act today may have seemed like a small chisel strike against hard stone, but heaven saw it as the unveiling of destiny, long hidden inside you. God laughed, not because it was trivial, but because the design he had always seen was finally revealed in you. Could it be that the laughter of God is the confirmation that the masterpiece is already breaking through the marble of your trials? And if one stroke could bring such joy to heaven, imagine what the next chisels of faith will reveal. Perhaps you are closer to completion than you dare to believe. And, chosen ones, remember this: God's laughter over you today is not just about this moment, it is momentum. Like kinetic energy released from a pendulum, once set in motion, it cannot return without power, multiplying. His joy over you today will keep swinging forward, breaking chains, shifting patterns, and realigning paths. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. If his joy strengthens you, then his laughter arms you with a force no darkness can undo. This is not just encouragement, it is empowerment. And so I ask you, what if your smallest step today set off the loudest echo in heaven? What if God's laughter was the beginning of your greatest victory? And what if this joy, echoing from eternity, becomes the soundtrack of your next season? If so, walk boldly, because the heavens have already celebrated your unseen breakthrough. Chosen ones, today you have witnessed something few ever dare to imagine: the sound of heaven laughing, not laughter of mockery, but of delight, not the laughter of chance, but of certainty. What you did may have felt small, hidden, or even strange in your eyes, but in the eyes of the Almighty, it was the key that unlocked joy in eternity. That sound is proof that your obedience, your faith, and your courage have reached the throne room of God. And when God laughs, it is not just a moment, it is a movement. It is the echo of His approval, the seal of His promise, and the announcement that no darkness can overturn what He has already rejoiced in. So walk now with boldness. Carry this moment as a banner over your life. Let the memory of His laughter remind you that you are not overlooked, you are not forgotten, and you are not wandering without purpose. Heaven has recorded this moment, and it will speak for you when words cannot. If God Himself has laughed over you, then truly what can man do to stop you? Before you go, if this word has touched your spirit, I ask you to support this channel. Like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss the next revelation. And to those who have supported through super thanks, I want to say from my heart, thank you. And even if you never gave a coin but gave your time, your prayers, or your attention, know that you are just as deeply valued. Chosen ones, I bless you now. May joy be your portion. May peace be your shield. May God's laughter echo over your home, your family, and your future. And may you never forget, the one who sits in the heavens has already smiled over you.